A Roman senator vouching for his client with a letter and Netflix's algorithm suggesting your next show are running the exact same code, just 18 centuries apart. One used ink and reputation. The other uses data and probability. But strip away the technology, and they're solving the identical problem. How do you match a stranger with the right thing when you can't personally evaluate every option yourself? By the end of this video, you'll never look at a recommended for you row the same way again. Imagine stepping into a massive, unfamiliar city with money in your pocket and nothing else. No map, no reviews, no way to check whether the merchant across the street is honest or the tavern down the road is worth your coin. Every choice in front of you is a gamble because you have no way to evaluate any of it yourself. That's not just a thought experiment. It's a problem every growing society eventually runs into. When the number of available options, people, goods, services, opportunities grows past what a single person can personally investigate, something has to stand between that person and the full pile of choices. Something has to filter it down. This mattered enormously in the ancient world. A city the size of Rome, with roughly 1 million residents by the 1st century AD, was too large for any one person to navigate through personal knowledge alone. Choosing badly wasn't a minor inconvenience. It could mean wasted money, wasted time, or trusting the wrong person entirely. It matters just as much today, just in a different form. Streaming platforms like Netflix offer thousands of titles. Left with nothing but an unsorted list, most people wouldn't know where to begin, and many would simply give up looking. The difficulty is the same in both cases. No single mind can hold the full picture of everything available and everything about the person choosing. Something has to compress both sides down into a workable match and do it well enough, consistently enough, that people keep trusting it. Rome solved this problem without a single ledger of ratings or reviews. It solved it through people, specifically through a structure known as the Patron-Client system. At the center of Roman society sat the patronus, a person of wealth, status, or influence. Around him orbited a network of clients, individuals who depended on him for support, opportunity, and access. This wasn't an informal friendship. It was a recognized social institution, carrying real obligations on both sides. A client owed his patron loyalty, public support, and service. In return, the patron owed his client protection, assistance, and, critically, access to opportunities the client could never have reached alone. This is where the recommendation function comes in. A patron's word functioned as a filter. If a client needed work, a business connection, a favorable introduction, or legal support, the patron didn't hand over a directory of options and let the client sort it out. He used his own accumulated knowledge of people and reputations to point his client toward the right one. The patron had, over years, built a mental map of who could be trusted, who was skilled, and who was worth the risk. That map became the client's shortcut past an overwhelming set of unknowns. This same mechanism scaled up formally through a practice called Commendatio, the letter of recommendation. Roman statesmen and officials, including Cicero, whose personal letters survive in large numbers, regularly wrote Commendatio on behalf of others, vouching for a person's character or ability to someone who had never met them. A general might write one for a soldier seeking a position. A merchant might carry one into a new city where nobody knew his name. The letter compressed years of personal observation into a portable, transferable signal, something a total stranger could act on without having to verify it themselves. What made this system function wasn't just goodwill. It was accountability. A patron's own reputation was tied to the people he recommended. If a client he vouched for turned out to be dishonest or incompetent, that reflected back on the patron himself. This gave every recommendation real weight, because the person making it had something to lose if it turned out to be wrong. In effect, Rome built a human-powered filtering system. Personal knowledge, reputation, and social obligation did the work that no directory or catalog could do. It didn't require writing, technology, or infrastructure beyond relationships themselves, just people who knew people, willing to stake their own name on the recommendation. But this system had a hard ceiling. It only worked as far as personal relationships could stretch. What happens when the population being served isn't a network of a few thousand connected Romans, but hundreds of millions of strangers who will never know each other's names? Nearly 2,000 years later, A streaming company faced the same underlying problem, just at a scale no patron network could ever reach. Netflix couldn't rely on a person who personally knew every subscriber and every title well enough to make a trustworthy match. There was no way to write a Commendatio for a piece of content to millions of strangers at once. So Netflix built something to replace the patron entirely, not a person, but a system driven by data. The shift became publicly visible in 2006, when Netflix launched the Netflix Prize, an open competition offering $1 million to anyone who could improve the accuracy of its recommendation algorithm by a set margin. This wasn't just a marketing stunt. It was a direct acknowledgement that recommendation was a serious technical problem worth serious investment, and it pushed the entire field of collaborative filtering forward. The competition ran until 2009, when a combined team finally hit the improvement threshold Netflix had set. The mechanism itself works by replacing a patron's personal familiarity with behavioral data. Instead of one person's accumulated judgment about who to trust, Netflix gathers what a subscriber actually watches, when they watch it, what they pause, what they abandon partway through, and what they finish in one sitting. That raw behavior gets compared against patterns from millions of other subscribers with similar habits. If enough people who watched what you watched also enjoyed a particular film, that film moves up your list. This is collaborative filtering. The algorithm doesn't need to understand why something is a good match, only that the pattern holds. Over time, Netflix layered in more signals: genre preferences, viewing history, time of day, even the artwork shown for a title, which is itself personalized based on what's likely to catch a specific viewer's attention. None of this requires a formal declaration from the subscriber. It happens automatically, in the background, the same way Facebook gathers behavioral data as a byproduct of ordinary use. The result is a system that performs the same core function a Roman patron once did, filtering an overwhelming set of options down to a small, workable shortlist, but without any human ever personally vouching for anything. Netflix has publicly stated that recommendations, rather than active search, drive the large majority of what subscribers actually watch. Left with an unsorted catalog, most people simply wouldn't engage with it. The filtering layer isn't optional anymore. It's the product. What makes this especially different from Rome is what's at stake when a recommendation fails. A Roman patron who vouched for an untrustworthy client suffered real reputational damage, sometimes permanently. If Netflix recommends a film you dislike, nothing happens. You simply scroll past it, and the algorithm quietly adjusts. There's no personal accountability sitting behind any single suggestion, because no single entity is actually making it. It's an aggregate, built from patterns across millions of other viewers, none of whom ever agreed to vouch for anything. Two systems, separated by roughly 2,000 years, are solving the exact same underlying problem, filtering overwhelming choice down to something an individual can actually act on. One did it through people who knew each other. The other does it through machines that know almost nothing except behavior. It's time to see exactly how far that comparison holds, and where it genuinely breaks apart. Strip both systems down to their bare mechanics, and the same three-part skeleton shows up underneath each one. First, a signal-gathering mechanism. In Rome, this was a patron's personal, accumulated knowledge of the people around him, built over years of direct observation. In Netflix's system, it's behavioral data, collected automatically and constantly from millions of subscribers at once. Second, a matching process. A Roman patron applied his own judgment, weighing what he knew about a person's character against what an opportunity required. Netflix applies collaborative filtering, comparing a subscriber's behavior against patterns found across the rest of its user base. Third, a feedback loop that keeps the system honest. For a patron, that loop ran through his own reputation. A bad recommendation reflected on him personally. For Netflix, the loop runs through engagement and retention data. A bad recommendation doesn't damage anyone's name. It just gets ignored, and the algorithm adjusts on its own. Once you see the systems broken down this way, the similarities go deeper than they first appear. Both rely on someone else's accumulated observation, standing in for the individual's own limited knowledge. A Roman client didn't need to personally evaluate a stranger because his patron had already done that work. A Netflix subscriber doesn't need to sort through thousands of titles because the algorithm has already done that work using the viewing patterns of people like them. Both systems also compress enormous amounts of information into something small and immediately usable. A Commendatio letter reduced years of a patron's judgment into a few sentences a stranger could act on instantly. A recommendation row on a Netflix homepage reduces millions of data points into 10 or 20 titles a subscriber can scan in seconds. Both systems require constant updating to stay useful. A patron's knowledge of people changed as those people changed, and an outdated recommendation could damage his credibility. Netflix's model updates continuously with every new interaction because a system trained only on old behavior quickly stops reflecting what a subscriber actually wants. And both systems create a kind of dependency. Once a Roman client grew used to relying on his patron's judgment, navigating Rome without that guidance became far harder. Once a modern viewer grows used to a curated home screen, scrolling through an unsorted catalog feels almost unusable by comparison. But the differences matter just as much, and forcing a cleaner comparison than actually exists would misrepresent both systems. Rome's system was personal and relationship-bound. A recommendation was tied directly to the reputation of an identifiable individual, and that person could be publicly embarrassed if the recommendation failed. Netflix's system is statistical and impersonal. No individual is vouching for anything, and there's no reputation at stake when a suggestion misses the mark, only a quiet adjustment in the background. Rome's system was also exclusionary by design. You needed an existing relationship just to enter the network in the first place, which meant huge portions of the population had limited or no access to it at all. Netflix's system is open by default, available to any subscriber the moment they sign up, and only becomes personalized after the fact, based on what they actually do. The scale involved isn't even comparable. A well-connected Roman patron might have maintained meaningful knowledge of a few hundred or a few thousand people over the course of his life. Netflix processes behavioral signals from hundreds of millions of subscribers, generating vastly more data every single day than existed in the entire recorded history of the Patron-Client system. Zoom out far enough, and a hidden pattern emerges that connects far more than just these two examples. Any system operating past the point of personal scale knowledge has to convert something into a proxy for judgment, either relationships or behavior, because direct personal familiarity simply stops being possible at scale. That proxy always trades some accuracy for reach. A patron who personally knew a client could judge nuance an algorithm never sees. An algorithm that processes millions of data points can spot patterns a single human mind could never track. Neither approach is strictly better. Each is a different answer to the same unavoidable trade-off between depth and scale, which leads to the lesson worth carrying forward. Every recommendation, whether it comes from a Roman patron or a modern algorithm, is a compressed judgment made on someone else's behalf, and that judgment is always optimized for something. A patron optimized for his own reputation. Netflix optimizes for engagement and retention. Neither is optimizing purely for the recipient's satisfaction in isolation, even when the outcome happens to align. Understanding a recommendation system means understanding what it's actually built to maximize, not just trusting that it exists to serve you. So the next time something gets recommended to you, a show, a job, a product, a person, it's worth asking the same question Roman clients and Netflix subscribers are both quietly answering every day. Who, or what, is actually doing the judging, and what are they optimizing for? Is it built for you, or built for something that just happens to look like it's for you? So here's what I want to know. Think of the last thing that was recommended to you by an algorithm, a friend, anyone. Do you actually know what that recommendation was optimized for? Drop your answer below.